Hello everyone, and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Bold and the Beautiful, BNB, spoilers for Wednesday, November 19th, state that Luna Nozawa, Lisa Yamada, will flee after Will Spencer's crew Moro rejection, prompting Deputy Chief Bradley Baker, Dan Martin, to launch his fugitive search. At the beach house, Luna hoped Will would tell her everything she wanted to know. Although Luna would like to create a future with Will and their kid, Will has made it obvious that this will never happen. Luna stood there in tears as Will berated her and argued that the kid was their sole link. Will only wants to hear about the kid from now on, so Luna appears to be realizing how much he despises her. May threatened to call the cops again in Wednesday's BNB episode, so Luna may flee before he can do so. Luna will realize she needs to act quickly, or she will end up back in prison. Deputy Chief Bradley Baker will lead the police search for Luna, but other critical actors will join the effort in future episodes. For the time being, Poppy Nozawa, Romy Park, and Lee Finnegan's Naomi Matsuda dinner plans may be derailed when they learn of Luna's prison release. Lee and Poppy will not let Luna cause any more grief and ruin, therefore they will take action. Poppy and Lee will join the Luna hunt later this week, but the news of Luna's escape will generate additional worry beforehand. Electra Forrester, Linnea Grace, Ivy Forrester, Ashley Brewer, Bill Spencer, Don Diamont, Katie Logan, Heather Tom, and others on Canvas may likely react strongly to the latest Luna vacation updates. Luna's plan to sneak out of prison and ambush will have set her up for some wild moments. BNB supporters may come to regret Luna's decision, as alarming signs regarding the next chapter of this plot emerge. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers predict Luna's beach run will result in some stunning scenes, so stay tuned. The night had fallen heavily over Los Angeles, making the city throb with a deeper intensity than usual. Neon lights extended over the wet pavement, and each passing car appeared to reverberate with its own story of heartbreak, betrayal, love, and terror. Luna Nozawa was fleeing someplace amid the chaotic sprawl. Her breath came out in quick bursts, the biting air scorching her lungs as she held her bag tightly to her side. Earlier that afternoon, she had concluded that Will Spencer's frigid rejection was the worst thing that could happen to her. She'd stood there, shivering, attempting to keep her emotions under control as he delivered the kind of blow that shattered the carefully constructed hopes she'd carried with her for months. She knew Will could be harsh, even brutally honest, but she never expected him to cut her off so totally. She had confessed her heart and laid her sentiments bare, only to be greeted with an impenetrable wall that left her suffocated. Will wasn't completely unconcerned, but he had a knack of shielding himself so strongly that he injured those closest to him. Luna walked out of Spencer Publications, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, refusing to fall until she was far enough away that no one could see. She told herself all she needed was air, a pause, and some room to ponder. But she hadn't planned on sprinting. Yet there she was, vanishing into the winding streets of downtown as the emotional weight of the day made her feel as if she needed to escape not only Will, but everyone and everything associated with him. Meanwhile, across the city, Deacon Sharp was alone in his tight flat above Il Giardino. He'd been staring at his hands for what seemed like hours. The silence around him was growing uncomfortable. Every creak in the structure caused him to flinch. Every sound in the distance increased his heart rate. He understood exactly what he had done. He knew the truth that no one else, not Brooke, Hope, or Sheila, had discovered. And he knew that eventually, he'd have to face the consequences. What bothered him the most was not the accident itself, but the decision he made seconds later, to run rather than stay. And now Luna was disappeared. Everyone was searching for her. And Deacon understood why he couldn't bring himself to join the quest. He found himself clutching the edge of the counter to keep from shaking. He could still see the brightness of headlights, the awful jolt when the body collided with his car, and how the world appeared to fall in on itself when he realized what had happened. He had not intended to hit anyone. He hadn't even been driving quickly. But something had happened. When he came out and saw her, Luna, everything inside him froze. He'd muttered her name, but she was too still. And before he could convince himself to check again, a car approached, its tires screeching as it slowed. Panic rose. Fear consumed him entirely, and he made a decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. He got back into the car and drove off. Now, news was everywhere. The Forrestas, Logans, and Spencers were all frantic. Police Chief Baker initiated a citywide hunt for Luna when Will revealed she had fled distraught and had not contacted anyone since. And, while everyone felt she was simply heartbroken and overwhelmed, Baker suspected something sinister had occurred. As the evening progressed, Baker assembled his team at the station. The whiteboards were adorned with maps, camera stills, and potential leads. He stood in front of the room, arms crossed. "We need to widen the search perimeter," he stated forcefully. "Traffic camera footage shows Luna walking east, but she then vanishes from sight. We have no evidence that she boarded a bus, used a rideshare, or met up with anyone. That means she's missing, possibly injured, and we need to treat this as a fugitive case." Some police raised their eyebrows. Fugitive wasn't the usual wording for a search for a missing young woman. But Baker was not using it in a legal sense. He meant Luna was fleeing from her feelings, her reality, whatever terror had pushed her to disappear into the night. And they had to track her down with the same haste as if she didn't want to be discovered. Back at Il Giardino, Deacon stood up and paced. He couldn't keep it any longer. Not with the entire city searching for her. Not with the likelihood that she was no longer alive and that he was to blame. He grabbed for the phone, then withdrew his hand. He did this repeatedly, as if his body were fighting itself. He understood what confessing meant. He knew he'd be tossing away everything he'd fought so hard to rebuild. His relationship with Hope, his tenuous bond with Brooke, his business, and his independence. But wasn't that a tiny price to pay given what Luna had lost? The guilt gnawed at him like a living creature. He sat down again, his head resting in his hands. Memories of his own past failures, every wrong decision he'd taken, every time he'd promised to do better, it all came crashing through him like a wave. If he didn't speak out, if he didn't come clean, he'd never get out of this. Luna's family would never find peace. Luna felt herself fatigued and trembling as the night progressed. She had no idea where she was anymore. Her thoughts were fading into a blur of panic and bewilderment. Everything hurt, her head, chest, and legs. She felt like she was losing herself, as if the feelings she had worked so hard to control were finally swallowing her up. She sat down behind a column and hugged her knees. Her clothing were soaked from sprinting through the street sprinklers. A little gash near her temple throbbed. She couldn't remember getting it. Maybe she fell or stumbled into something, but the disorientation caused everything to blend together. She whispered Will's name once and immediately regretted it.
She did not want to think about him.
She preferred not to think about anyone. She simply wanted to disappear. Meanwhile, at Spencer Publications, Will paced back and forth. He had previously tried to act indifferent, cutting himself off in the same manner he always did when emotions were too overwhelming. But something about Luna's expression when she departed has haunted him ever since. His father, Bill, watched him from behind his desk. "What's up with you?" Bill inquired. Will hesitated, but did not lie. "I should have handled it better." Bill leaned back and crossed his arms. "Son, people are hurt in relationships. This happens. But if you believe Luna is in danger, we must. It's more than just that she's hurt," Will explained quietly. "I believe she ran because of me. And now no one can find her." He felt more guilty than he had ever felt. He had been reared by strong men who did not let emotions influence their decisions. But Luna had been different. She had penetrated his defenses in ways he had not imagined. And when it worried him, he shut her out rather than letting her in. Bill placed a hand on his shoulder. "The cops will find her," but Will remained skeptical. By midnight, Deacon couldn't take the solitude anymore. He grabbed his jacket, locked the eatery, and took hard strides toward the police station. Every instinct told him to turn back, yet he kept going. When he reached the doors, he stopped briefly before entering. Chief Baker looked up as Deacon arrived. "Sharp," Baker said, astonished. I did not expect to see you here. We're knee-deep in a missing persons, I know, Deacon interjected, his voice shaking. Baker grimaced. That's why I'm here. What do you mean? Deacon gulped hard and forced the words out. Because I am the reason Luna is missing. I'm the one that hit her. I am the one who drove away. The room went silent. Baker's countenance tightened, but not in an angry way, but rather in dismal recognition. He motioned Deacon to sit. Deacon said, "Start from the beginning." He explained everything, every detail he could recall, every incident that had imprinted itself on his mind. His voice shook, and he had to pause twice to catch his breath before proceeding. Baker listened without interruption, but his jaw tightened as the story progressed. So, you're saying you hit Luna with your car, and she was gone when you returned? Baker asked softly. I'm not sure where she went, Deacon muttered. I thought she had died. But they couldn't find a body. So perhaps she got up. Perhaps she is alive. Maybe she's out there somewhere and needs assistance. His voice trembled. Baker stood. You understand you're confessing to a felony. I understand, the priest responded. Do whatever you need to. Just find her. Baker gave a quick nod and called for his crew. Within minutes, additional orders were issued. Search teams were redirected to the area where Deacon claimed the crash occurred. Drone squads are deployed. The paramedics were put on alert. And the search for Luna intensified, not as a runaway, nor as a devastated girl fleeing rejection, but as an injured survivor who went missing after a hit and run. Hours later, as the first faint indications of light appeared in the sky, a patrol officer discovered evidence of movement inside the abandoned parking garage. A discarded handbag, a blood smear, a trail of footprints. Then, at the far wall, Luna curled up beneath a concrete beam, shaking and barely conscious. Broken, terrified, and confused, yet alive. As the cop radioed it in, the city seemed to exhale, if only for a moment. The consequences would be catastrophic. Deacon's disclosure would shock every Luna family member. Will would have to face the repercussions for pushing her away. Baker's probe was only begun. But for now, the most important thing was that Luna had been discovered. The truth, raw, brutal, and unavoidable, was now being revealed. Luna Nozawa stood at the turnout, wet to the skin, her thin silk shirt sticking to her like a second, translucent layer. She had driven here without thinking, with no strategy other than to put miles between herself and the Forrester estate, where Will Spencer had just looked her in the eye and whispered the words that broke her heart. I can't do it anymore, Luna. I never promised you eternity. It was as if she had asked for eternity. All she wanted was the truth. Why he kept disappearing at night, why he cringed every time Ridge's name was spoken, why he occasionally looked at her as if she were a mistake he couldn't fix. Apparently, even that was too much. Her phone vibrated in her pocket for the 20th time. She didn't need to look to know it was Poppy, desperate, and pleading with her to come home. Luna turned it off and flung it into the back seat of the small red convertible Steffi had lent her, just until you get on your feet. The irony tasted metallic on her tongue. She would never get back on her feet. Not after tonight. The headlights swept slowly and deliberately across the rear-view mirror. Not a passerby. Someone had following her. The automobile came to a stop 20 feet back, its engine idle. Luna's pulse pounded in her throat. She reached for the door handle, prepared to flee into the darkness if necessary, when the driver's door opened and a tall man emerged into the downpour. Deke Messersmith. Of all the individuals she expected to pursue her that night, the silent, brooding head of Forrester Security came dead last. He was saturated in seconds, his dark hair stuck to his brow, his white shirt growing sheer like hers. He didn't shout over the storm. Instead, he moved toward her with the same steady step he used while guiding paparazzi away from the property.
Calm.
Inexorable. Luna's fingers curled around the driving wheel. Go home, Deke. He paused beside her window, rain dripping down his lashes. Can't do that. I'm not your problem. You are tonight. Something about his words made her chest hurt more than Will's rejection had. It was not pity. It was something rawer and older. She turned aside, staring out at the black water clawing at the rocks below. Did Steffi send you something? Or was it Ridge, ensuring that the insane intern did not do anything that would come up on TMZ? Neither. He laid one hand on the roof of her car and leaned down, forcing her to meet his gaze. I came because you're about to drive off that cliff if someone doesn't stop you. I'm not. You're shaking so violently, the wheel vibrates. Keys, Luna.
Now.
She wanted to tell him to go to hell. She wanted to floor it and prove she didn't need to be rescued. However, her hands betrayed her, trembling too furiously to even shift into gear. She slapped the keys into his waiting palm, uttering a Korean slur she was unaware she knew. DEKE did not gloat. He simply stepped around, opened her door, and brought her outside into the rain. The tears she'd been holding back spilled forth as soon as the rain hit her face. She had no idea if he hugged her or if she had crashed into him. All she knew was the solid wall of his chest and the way his arms clamped around her, like if he could keep every shattered piece together. I hate him, she wailed into his drenched shirt. I hate him so much. I know, DEKE muttered against her temple. I know. He allowed her to cry until the storm within her matched the one above. Then, he gently guided her toward his black SUV. Come on. I'm taking you somewhere dry. She should have struggled more. Should have requested that he take her home, to Poppy, or anywhere but with him. But she was exhausted, bone deep, soul-sick tired, and DEKE's touch on the small of her back seemed like the one constant thing in the universe. He belted her in, pulled off his jacket, and placed it across her shoulders. It smelled like cedar and gun oil, as well as something she couldn't put her finger on but really wanted. He hopped behind the vehicle, returned to the PCH, and drove south, away from Los Angeles and everything. They didn't talk for a long time. The wipers kept a mesmerizing pace. Luna glanced out the window at the fuzzy lights of passing cars, attempting to reassemble herself. Finally, she murmured, her voice hoarse. Why you? DEKE's hands flexed against the wheel. What do you mean? Why did you follow me tonight, out of all the others who could have done so? He was so quiet that she assumed he wouldn't respond. When he spoke, his voice was harsh, as if the words had rusted inside him for years. Because I know exactly how it feels when a Spencer decides you're disposable. Luna turned to look at him. The dashboard lights cast harsh shadows on his face, making him appear older than his 34 years. What are you talking about? He exhaled through his nose. You aren't the only lady Will Spencer promised the moon to and then abandoned when it became inconvenient. There was another one about 10 years ago. She was 19. She thought she was in love. I thought he was too. When she became pregnant, he advised her to take care of it and offered to pay. She said no. He then explained that she was on her own. She came to me because she was terrified and had no other place to go. Luna felt the air leave her lungs. DEKE. Her name was Marisol. His voice crackled, as if it still had teeth. She was my baby sister. The rain on the windshield echoed like gunfire. Luna muttered, What happened? Will's family closed ranks. Despite the fact that she was born here, she was threatened with losing her employment, reputation, and immigration status. She lost everything. The stress. He swallowed hard. She had a miscarriage at 7 months. Bled out in a clinic that refused to call an ambulance because she couldn't pay up ahead. She had already left by the time I arrived. Luna's palm shot to her mouth. Horror and recognition washed over her in waves. Oh my God. I'm really sorry, DEKE. I joined Forrester Security 2 months later, he said, his voice flat and soldier-like. I told myself it was to keep an eye on the family that ruined my. I told myself I was waiting for the right opportunity to make them feel how Marisol felt. But the moment never arrived. They're overly insulated. Too powerful. And then you showed up. He looked over at her, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. The first day you walked into the building, giggling at something Steffi said, I recognized Marisol in you. Same wide eyes. Same obstinate chin. Same misguided belief that these folks were better than they are. I despised you for it. I hated you for falling into the same trap.